That touch felt like love. Or was it a warning? Sometimes, the smallest moments can change the way we see the world forever. It can be something as simple as a smile, a few words, or even a touch. At first, it feels warm, comforting, and safe, like the kind of closeness we all long for. But what happens when that same touch carries a weight you can't explain? When your heart tells you one thing, but your mind whispers something else. That's where this story begins. I was young, and like most people, I craved care and affection. Every kind gesture felt like love. Every moment of attention made me feel valued. There was one person I trusted deeply, someone who was supposed to be a source of comfort in my life. And for a while, that's exactly what it felt like. Their presence gave me peace, their words gave me strength, and when they reached out, it felt like protection. At least, that's what I thought. But with time, a strange uneasiness began to grow inside me. I couldn't explain it to anyone, maybe not even to myself. What once felt like safety began to feel different, like there was something hiding beneath the surface. The warmth I once believed in started to feel confusing. Was it really love? Or was it something else I wasn't ready to see? The hardest part was not knowing which voice to believe, the one that told me I was safe, or the one that warned me to be careful. That constant conflict played over and over in my head, making me question everything I thought I understood about trust, care, and closeness. And that's where this story takes a turn. Because one moment changed everything, and from that point on, nothing was ever the same again. I remember those days so clearly, even though a lot of time has passed. Back then, life looked simple on the outside. School, friends, laughter, and the small routines that make up a childhood. But behind all that, I carried a feeling that I couldn't put into words. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe I was just being too sensitive. After all, everyone around me seemed to believe this person was caring and trustworthy. They smiled at others, offered help, and carried themselves like someone who could never do harm. To the world, they looked perfect. To me, they looked safe too, at least in the beginning. But sometimes, the truth hides in small details. It shows up in the way someone looks at you when nobody else is watching. It creeps in during moments when everything feels quiet, when you should feel at ease, yet a strange discomfort lingers in the air. I didn't understand it fully at that age, but my heart kept sending signals. It was as if something deep inside me was trying to protect me, even when my mind kept searching for reasons to dismiss it. I started noticing how my emotions changed around this person. In public, I laughed and felt normal, but when I was alone with them, I grew tense without knowing why. It wasn't about any one action. It was the overall feeling, the unspoken energy that made me question my own instincts. Was I imagining it? Was I being ungrateful for the care I was receiving? Or was my inner voice telling me a truth I was too scared to admit? That inner conflict began to shape the way I saw the world. I found myself becoming more cautious, paying closer attention to small things others would overlook. I would rehearse conversations in my head, thinking about what I should say or how I should act just to feel comfortable. Yet no matter how much I tried to convince myself everything was fine, the uneasy feeling never left me. Every day felt like a test, and I didn't even know the rules. On the outside, I looked like any other child going through ordinary moments, but inside, I felt torn between trust and fear. The hardest part was that nobody else could see what I felt. To everyone else, nothing seemed wrong. But deep inside, I knew something was building, something I couldn't name yet. And then came a moment I'll never forget, a moment that forced me to see what I had been avoiding all along. That moment I'll never forget didn't come with loud noises or dramatic scenes. It came quietly, like a shadow slipping into the room. On the surface, everything seemed normal, but something about the way time slowed down made me realize that what I was feeling was real. The same touch, the same closeness that once felt like care, suddenly carried a weight I couldn't ignore anymore. My chest tightened, my breath felt heavy, and for the first time, I admitted to myself that this wasn't only about confusion. It was about a conflict inside me that wouldn't go away. The hardest part was that nobody else noticed. Around my family and friends, this person still played the role of a supportive figure. They laughed with others, helped when someone needed it, and carried themselves like they were above suspicion. People trusted them easily, and that made me question myself even more. How could everyone see kindness while I was struggling with doubt? Was it possible I was the only one who felt this way? Or was I seeing something they couldn't? As days turned into weeks, the tension only grew stronger. I began pulling back, keeping my distance whenever I could. I found excuses to stay busy, to avoid being alone, but no matter how much space I tried to create, the uneasy moments kept finding me. It felt like a battle between two worlds, the one where I wanted to believe I was safe, and the one where my instincts told me to stay alert. There were times I thought about telling someone, a close friend, a teacher, maybe even another family member. But the words never came out. How could I explain something that didn't leave any marks or clear evidence? How could I convince others to believe in a feeling I barely understood myself? The fear of being dismissed or misunderstood kept me silent. Still, the silence didn't make the conflict disappear. If anything, it grew louder in my mind. I started noticing how my moods changed, how easily I felt anxious, how hard it became to relax even in safe places. The confusion began to seep into other parts of my life, my friendships, my schoolwork, even the way I looked at myself. And just when I thought I could manage it quietly, something happened that shook me even deeper. It was small, almost unnoticeable to others, but to me, it was proof that my fears weren't only in my imagination. It happened on an ordinary evening, one of those days that looked like any other from the outside. The house was quiet, the air heavy with stillness. I remember sitting there, trying to distract myself with small tasks, hoping the uneasiness inside me would finally fade away. But then, a moment arrived that I couldn't dismiss. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was subtle, but it pierced through every wall I had built inside myself. The way they looked at me, the way the silence stretched longer than it should have, told me everything. It wasn't just my imagination anymore. Something in that moment confirmed my deepest fear, and I couldn't unsee it. From that night, my world shifted. The line between safety and danger grew thinner and thinner until I could barely tell the difference. Every sound in the house, every step in the hallway, made my heart race. I started listening for patterns, when they were near, when they were distracted, when I could finally breathe without feeling watched. It felt like I was living two lives, the one everyone else saw, where I smiled and pretended everything was fine, and the one inside my head, where fear followed me everywhere. The more I noticed, the more impossible it became to ignore. Their kindness in public now felt like a mask, one that fooled everyone but me. I would study their every move, waiting for that flicker of truth to show itself again. And it always did, in small ways that no one else seemed to catch. I felt like I was carrying a secret too heavy for my shoulders, yet too dangerous to speak aloud. At school, I tried to lose myself in normal routines. Friends laughed, teachers gave assignments, life carried on as usual. But I couldn't escape the shadow of what I felt at home. Sometimes, in the middle of class, I would zone out, replaying moments in my mind, questioning if I had exaggerated them, and then remembering that look, that undeniable proof that kept haunting me. My grades began to slip, my energy drained, and people started asking if I was okay. I always said yes, but inside I wanted to scream. The silence around me became another enemy. How do you fight something you can't name out loud? I thought about opening up, but the words formed knots in my throat. What if no one believed me? What if I made things worse? I carried those questions like chains, holding me back every time I came close to speaking up. And then came the night that pushed everything to the edge. The house was dark, the world outside quiet, and I found myself face to face with the fear I had tried so hard to outrun. My instincts screamed louder than ever before. Every nerve in my body told me this was the moment, the one I had been sensing all along. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, and my heart pounded so loudly I thought it might give me away. This was it, the moment that would either break me or force me to find my voice. The conflict that had been building for so long was now standing right in front of me, undeniable, unshakable. And as the seconds stretched into what felt like hours, I realized there was no turning back. Everything was leading to this point. What I chose to do next would change everything. Just when I thought the tension had reached its highest point, life found a way to test me even further. That night, when everything felt too close, too suffocating, I thought it couldn't get worse. But then came something I never expected, a second shift, a twist that made the ground beneath me feel even less stable. It wasn't only about the uneasy moments anymore. It was about the sudden realization that I wasn't imagining how carefully I was being watched. I wasn't just overthinking the patterns. This time, there was proof that couldn't be denied. I noticed it in the smallest detail. A door that should have been closed was slightly open. An object I had moved earlier was placed back exactly where I didn't leave it. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone else, but to me it screamed louder than words. It meant one thing. Someone had been checking, observing, making sure they knew exactly what I was doing. That discovery chilled me more than anything else. The touch, the looks, the silence. Those were things I could still question in my head. But this was physical, visible, undeniable. Suddenly the stakes grew higher. I realized this wasn't just about avoiding uncomfortable moments anymore. It was about protecting my space, my sanity, maybe even my future. The fear that I might be trapped in a situation no one else could see became heavier each day. I tried harder to act normal, to smile at the right times, but the effort left me exhausted. At night, when the house grew quiet, I barely slept. Every sound made me wonder if I was still being watched. Every shadow looked like confirmation of my worst fears. The strange part was how normal everything looked from the outside. To others, life was fine. Family dinners happened, conversations sounded casual, routines carried on. But beneath that calm surface, I was living in constant alertness. And the more I tried to hide my fear, the sharper it grew. It was like being caught in a play where everyone else was following the script, and I was the only one who knew something wasn't right. The second twist wasn't only in what I discovered, it was in how it made me see the people around me differently. I began questioning who I could trust. Were they blind to what was happening, or did they see signs and choose to ignore them? That thought ate away at me, because if no one else was willing to notice, then I truly was alone in this. The conflict grew louder inside me. On one side was silence, the safety of pretending everything was normal. On the other side was the unbearable truth, pressing harder each day, demanding that I act before it was too late. And with this new discovery, the fear wasn't only about one person anymore. It was about the possibility that I might never escape this cycle if I didn't find the courage to break it. The night stretched on, heavy with questions. Was this the moment I had to finally speak? Or would staying silent keep me safe a little longer? I didn't know. All I knew was that the story I thought I understood had twisted again, and now the danger felt closer than ever. The night of the climax came without warning. I hadn't planned it, I hadn't prepared a speech, but something inside me knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. The weight of secrets, the endless nights of unease, and the proof I had gathered finally collided into one moment where my fear had to turn into action. My heart was racing, my palms were shaking, but my voice finally broke through the silence. I spoke, not in anger, but with a trembling truth that had been locked inside me for far too long. The reaction was immediate. Shock filled the room, followed by a tension so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. For the first time, I saw masks crack. The image of perfection that this person carried began to crumble. They tried to deny, to twist the story, but something had shifted. My words carried a power I didn't know I had, and once spoken, they couldn't be taken back. The climax wasn't loud in the way movies show it. It was quiet, but sharp, like a storm that breaks with lightning before anyone can hear the thunder. Everyone else in the room was forced to confront what I had carried alone for so long. And in that confrontation, truth found its way out. The control they once had over me was broken, piece by piece, as others began to see what I had always seen. Just when I thought it was over, when I believed the worst was behind me, the final twist revealed itself. Someone I never expected spoke up. They admitted they had noticed signs too, little things they had brushed aside, moments they had dismissed as nothing. They confessed that my courage to speak had made them realize their own silence had been part of the problem. That revelation hit harder than anything else. It wasn't only me carrying the weight, it was all of us, tied together in ways I hadn't known. The climax ended not with a single victory, but with a deeper understanding. I wasn't alone anymore, and the truth had finally been spoken. But the twist reminded me that silence is never just one person's burden. It spreads, it hides, and it waits until someone chooses to break it. That night I did. And nothing was ever the same again. After that night, everything slowly began to change. The silence that had once wrapped around me so tightly was broken, and though it wasn't easy, the truth had finally been spoken out loud. For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight lift off my chest. It didn't mean the fear disappeared overnight, but it meant I no longer had to carry it alone. Others began to see what I had endured, and the responsibility was no longer mine alone to hold in secret. There were difficult days that followed. Questions came, explanations were needed, and trust had to be rebuilt in places where it had been broken. But each conversation, each moment of honesty, was like a step forward into a safer space. What had once been confusing and painful began to make sense. The story I thought would always remain hidden was now out in the open, and that gave me strength I never knew I had. The person I had feared lost the power they once held over me. Their influence faded as the truth became clearer, and the mask they wore could no longer hide them from the eyes of others. It wasn't an easy journey, but it was the beginning of healing. I learned that speaking up doesn't erase the past, but it gives the future a chance to be different. And that alone is powerful. Looking back, I realized the warning signs had always been there. The uneasy feelings, the small details, the conflict I carried inside, they were all signals urging me to listen to myself. And now I understand the importance of trusting those instincts. What feels like love should never come with confusion or fear. Real care doesn't leave you doubting your worth or questioning your safety. This story isn't only about me. It's about anyone who has ever felt torn between trust and fear, between silence and truth. If there's one thing I want you to take away, it's this: your feelings matter. Your voice matters. And no matter how heavy the silence feels, breaking it can change everything. That touch once felt like love. Then it became a warning. But in the end, it became something else too, a lesson in courage, a reminder to trust myself, and proof that even in the darkest moments, the truth has the power to set you free.